Okay, so we're going to read the next chunk of visions here. This is Jeremiah chapter 3, starting in verse 6. This section goes now to the end of chapter 6. This is during the reign of King Josiah, probably after the vision we just got done reading, which seems to be connected with Jeremiah's call, and was likely the first public statement or the first word he spoke to the people at that time. That was in the 12th year, or the 13th year, of Josiah's reign. Right after Josiah began his reform efforts, but before they found the book of the law in the 18th year of his reign. This section here is probably after they found the book of the law, and after they did the Passover and all that, and probably after that. And God is going to be talking about them repenting, but not really changing their behavior. So during the reign of King Josiah, the Lord said to me, "Have you seen what faithless Israel has done?" Now we're talking about the northern kingdom of Israel here. And this is sometime beyond the year 622 BC. This is probably after the big reforms Josiah made in his 18th year. Israel went into captivity in 722 BC, so this is 100 years earlier at this point. That was 100 years plus ago. This is probably sometime after 622 BC. Israel went into captivity 100 years plus earlier. So that's a thing of the past at this point in time. So the Lord said to me, "Have you seen what faithless Israel has done? She has gone up on every high hill and under every spreading tree and has committed adultery there. I thought that after she had done all this, she would return to me, but she did not. And her unfaithful sister Judah saw it." So now we're comparing the two kingdoms to two sisters. Israel's done and gone, and Judah's still around. But Judah's learned all the bad lessons of Israel and hasn't learned anything good from Israel. "I gave faithless Israel her certificate of divorce and sent her away because of all her adulteries. Yet I saw that her unfaithful sister Judah had no fear. She also went out and committed adultery. Because Israel's image," so God has two wives now. Remember, polygamy was permitted in their law. He wanted to only have one, but they split into two kingdoms, so now he has two, and he sent one of them away. "Because Israel's immorality mattered so little to her, she defiled the land and committed adultery with stone and wood. In spite of all this, her unfaithful sister Judah did not return to me with all her heart, but only in pretense, declares the Lord." So the reforms that Josiah made did not sink all the way down to the hearts of the people. Maybe some of them. I think Josiah did. I think Josiah took it to heart. And he might have had, there would have been others. It's not like it wouldn't have been nobody. It's not like there would have been nobody else besides Josiah and Jeremiah who truly did repent. But the people as a whole weren't truly changed from the inside out. The Lord said to me, "Faithless Israel is more righteous than unfaithful Judah. Go now, proclaim this message toward the north." So these are the scattered people of the fallen northern kingdom. Been gone for 100 years. The people here in the land now are remnants of the exile and deportation, where they took some of the Assyrians, took some of the Israelites away, then they brought some other people in to settle with the ones who survived and remained in the land. So the people who are there now are a mixed breed. "So go and proclaim this message toward the north. Return, faithless Israel, declares the Lord. I will frown on you no longer. For I am merciful, declares the Lord." So even after all this, 100 years after the kingdom fell, and the people are scattered and the bloodlines are getting polluted, he still wants them to return to him. "I will not be angry forever. Only acknowledge your guilt. You have rebelled against the Lord your God. You have scattered your favors to foreign gods and under every spreading tree, and you have not obeyed me, declares the Lord." Just acknowledge your guilt. That's a hard step to take. Again, we're seeing this play out in real time now as we refuse to take responsibility for what we did during COVID. Just acknowledge your guilt. Admit that what you were doing was wrong. That's an important step to take, and it's a hard step to take. It might even be the hardest step to take. Once you've done that, once you've acknowledged your guilt, once you've confessed, it's actually, I think, easier then to take the next step afterwards to correct the behavior and to move forward. But taking that first step of acknowledging your guilt, that is hard. That is hard to do. They didn't want to do it. They didn't do it back then. And we don't want to do it now either. Return, faithless people, declares the Lord, for I am your husband. I will choose you, one from a town and two from a clan, and bring you to Zion. Then I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will lead you with knowledge and understanding. In those days, when your numbers have increased greatly in the land, declares the Lord. Now this is one of those instances in Jeremiah where he is talking about the future. He's talking about this return from exile, this coming kingdom. He doesn't talk about this a whole lot, but there are these instances where he does, and here's one of them. So in those days, when your nations have increased greatly in the land, declares the Lord, men will no longer say, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It will never enter their minds or be remembered. It will not be missed, nor will another one be made. Now, I don't know if that's a reference to the fact the ark was already lost at this time or not. We did read in the Chronicles account, I think it was Chronicles, about Josiah instructing the priests to put the ark back where it belonged. In Josiah's Passover. Let's see here. Where is this? Yeah. Second Chronicles 35, verse 3. This is during Josiah's big Passover reforms in the 18th year of his reign. He said to the Levites, who instructed all Israel and who had been consecrated to the Lord, put the sacred ark in the temple that Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, built. It is not to be carried about on your shoulders. Now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel. So apparently, up to that moment, it was not in the temple for some reason, whether they had moved it during the days of Manasseh or whatever, it's not clear. But Josiah told them to put it back, apparently. And I don't know if this mentioned here in Jeremiah, which probably this prophecy was spoken just a little bit after that in time, is a reference to that. Maybe it went missing shortly thereafter. Maybe they misplaced it when they went to put it back. It's missing today. Nobody knows what happened to it today. It's never mentioned again. Okay, this is going to be the last time we'll ever hear it talked about until we see a vision of it in heaven and the vision of Revelation. We mentioned the Ark of the Covenant again. So we're literally not going to talk about it again. This is the last mention we're going to have in all of Scripture about it until we see it in heaven. So I don't know. I don't really know how. There seems to be some kind of overlap here. It seems like there has to be, but I don't know what it is. I can't really explain it to you. At any rate, it will not be missed, nor will another one be made. It doesn't need to be because God's own presence will be with them. The Ark of the Covenant itself was a symbol of God's presence. The idea was that he was literally sitting on it, and as they carried it around, it was basically his seat, his throne, his footstool, his chair, basically, like where they carried him around. So they needed this ark to be reminded of his presence at that point in time, but in the future they won't need it. He'll be right there with them. At that time they will call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord. And all nations will gather in Jerusalem to honor the name of the Lord. No longer will they follow the stubbornness of their evil hearts. In those days the house of Judah will join the house of Israel, and together they will come from the northern land, to the land I gave your forefathers as an inheritance. That again refers to them coming back down to the land by going up and around that desert. So they're coming from the north into the land by going up and around the desert, following the Euphrates River. So this is referring to both the return from exile and also some great glorious future kingdom where the houses are united again in the future. They were not united after they returned from exile. When we get down to the New Testament time, we're going to read about the conflict the Judeans had with the Samaritans, same people, who were the descendants of the house of Israel. They did not like each other. They did not get along. So in Jesus' day, in the apostles' day, the house of Israel and the house of Judah were not united. In some future day, in the kingdom, they're going to be. In the church, they are. And this is a reference to both of the kingdom of the church of God that Christ has initiated after his ministry, and somewhat also just to the return from exile that happened in time, several decades after this. I myself said, how gladly would I treat you like sons, and give you a desirable land, the most beautiful inheritance of any nation. I thought you would call me father, and not turn away from following me. But, like a woman unfaithful to her husband, you have been unfaithful to me, O house of Israel, declares the Lord. I said way back when we first started reading the Bible that the imagery of the husband and wife is going to be applied to God and his people. So part of the reason why in a marriage relationship the woman is always assumed to be the unfaithful one is because in the God-human relationship, the humans are always going to be the unfaithful ones. Israel or the church, all the people of God, always stand in for the bride. And if one member of this partnership is going to be unfaithful, it's going to be the people. That's part of the reason why the Old Testament always fingers the wife as being the unfaithful. The other reason is simply that was just a culture at the time. I'm not even sure if the ancient Israel even had the concept in their minds of what an unfaithful husband was. An unfaithful husband was just someone who had multiple wives, which was okay in their culture. Even God has two wives here, Israel and Judah. So that's why. I think it can get a little uncomfortable reading this over and over, how consistently every single time the woman is always assumed to be the unfaithful one, but there are reasons for that. It is a little uncomfortable, I think. And of course we know in actual experience that that's not always the case, okay? But in their culture, and then it was just that assumed to be that way, and the imagery that's being presented here is of God and his people as a marriage relationship, and so in that case, it is always going to be the bride, the people that are unfaithful. A cry is heard on the barren heights, the weeping and pleading of the people of Israel, because they have perverted their ways and have forgotten the Lord their God. Return, faithless people, I will cure you of your backsliding. Yes, we will come to you, for you are the Lord our God. So this is their response to him. Surely the idolatrous commotion on the hills and mountains is a deception. Surely in the Lord our God is the salvation of Israel. From our youth, shameful gods have consumed the fruits of our fathers' labor, their flocks and herds, their sons and daughters. Remember, this is their response to him. Let us lie down in our shame, and let our disgrace cover us. We have sinned against the Lord our God, both we and our fathers. From our youth till this day, we have not obeyed the Lord our God. So that is their response. Okay, so again, this is just the way they write it in this text, in this format. He had God say something, he then told the people something, and that was their response. And this is going to be God's response to their response. If you will return, O Israel, return to me, declares the Lord. If you put your detestable idols out of my sight, and no longer go astray, and if in a truthful, just, and righteous way you swear, as surely as the Lord lives, then the nations will be blessed by him, and in him they will glory. So if you do this, do it really, do it sincerely. Do it from the top down, the bottom up. Remember that uproot, tear down concept? Do it from the inside out. Be serious about it. They're not being serious about it, and that's going to be proven when Josiah dies and all this fades away. Josiah is serious about it. Some others may be serious about it, but the majority of the people are not serious about it, and that's going to be proven once Josiah is gone, and the next kings immediately revert back to the wicked ways of before. This is what the Lord says to the men of Judah and to Jerusalem. Break up your unplowed ground, and do not sow among thorns. So that's the whole idea of the uproot. It's like you really got to get in there and break up that ground, break up that soil in order to make it able to be tilled, in order to be useful as a field. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord. Circumcise your hearts, you men of Judah and people of Jerusalem. Or not just your flesh, okay, but your hearts. Or my wrath will break out and burn like fire because of the evil you have done. Burn with no one to quench it. There's that idea of the unquenchable fire. The unquenchable fire doesn't mean a fire that will literally never go out. It means a fire that cannot be quenched, cannot be put out until it's done burning whatever the Lord has decided to burn. It does not mean the fire itself will literally never go out. If that were true, then Jerusalem would be on fire still to this day, physically. It's not even really talking about literal fire either. It's just talking that God is going to burn up their evil, and there's not going to be anything anyone can do about it, to stop it. Announce in Judah and proclaim, and when they burned up, there were times when they were supposed to take an enemy nation or a city and burn everything up to God. When you put something under the ban, you were supposed to burn all of it up to God. That's basically what he's going to do to them, figuratively, if they don't return from him. If they continue in their shallow, skin-deep repentance, which is going to fade away as soon as Josiah dies, he's going to do this to them, and they're not going to be able to stop it. They can't quench the fire. They can't stop what God's going to do. Announce in Jerusalem and proclaim. Announce in Judah and proclaim in Jerusalem and say, sound the trumpet throughout the land. Cry aloud and say, gather together. Let us flee to the fortified cities. That's not going to help. The cities are going to fall just like the rest of the country will. Raise the signal to go to Zion. Flee for safety without delay. For I am bringing disaster from the north. Even terrible destruction. You just got done saying they're not going to be able to stop it. They're not going to be able to run from it either. As far as they flee, and no matter where they flee to, it's going to catch them. A lion has come out of his lair. A destroyer of nations has set out. He has left his place to lay waste to your land. Your towns will lie in ruins without inhabitant. So put on sackcloth, lament, and wail, for the fierce anger of the Lord has not turned away from us. In that day, declares the Lord, the king and the officials will lose heart. The priests will be horrified, and the prophets will be appalled. This is basically what we said 100 years ago about Assyria. The circumstances and the actors have changed. Okay, it's not going to be Assyria any longer, it's going to be Babylon. We read about Nahum coming along and preaching the final judgment of Assyria at the hands of Babylon, and so Babylon's taking Assyria's place as the destroying agent. But it's the same message, it's the same pattern. Then I said, this is Jeremiah speaking, ah, sovereign Lord, how completely you have deceived this people in Jerusalem by saying, you will have peace when the sword is at our throats. Now, what is he saying here? He's going to mention this again later on. This is one of those things that you kind of have to know other parts of the Bible to understand the theological message that's being communicated here. God is allowing false prophets. We haven't read about this yet in Jeremiah, but we will. God is allowing false prophets to come and say to the people that they are going to have peace. And so in that regard, he's allowing the people to believe what they want to believe. And we know that he does this. He did it back in Ahab's day at the end of 1 Kings. Remember 1 Kings 22? When he actually sent a spirit that was going to speak a message into Ahab's ear to get him to go into battle that he's going to die in. We read in 2 Thessalonians that God will send a deceiving spirit amongst the people who are determined not to follow him. This is the New Testament. We're skipping ahead quite a bit here, but let's just Second Thessalonians 2, starting in verse 9. The coming of the lawless one will be. Now we're not going to talk about who this lawless one is. That's where we'll get to that a year from now when we get to 2 Thessalonians, but we'll just ignore that for now. But the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan. who is a liar, he's a liar and the father of lies, as Jesus says in the Gospels, displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders. Counterfeit miracles, so lying signs. And that's the sort of thing the false prophets used to do. Those things the false prophets specialized in. And in every sort of evil that deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth, and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion, so they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness. We read about this again in Romans, at the beginning of Romans, that God will turn people over to their desire for sin after a certain point in time. He gets done talking about their sins in Romans 1, starting in verse 18, and then in verse 26, he says, because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Actually, before that, he says, therefore, because they wanted to do this, because they wanted to not follow God, God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts, sexual impurities, the degrading of their bodies. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. And because of this, God gave them over to shameful. So He will do that. He will, once you reach, I don't think He does it right away. I think He gives everybody a certain amount of time. But if you do get to a point where you just made up your mind that you're not going to believe it, you're not going to follow it, you're going to do whatever you want to do, He will turn you over to that. He will allow you to continue to believe whatever lie you want to believe. Now, He'll condemn you for it, okay? Just because He's allowing you to do that doesn't mean He's going to let you escape the consequences of it, or that you're not going to bring condemnation on yourself for it. In the book of Romans, Paul talks a lot about condemnation. I just quoted from a few verses in early Romans, and he talks a lot about condemnation in that book. And that we're all under condemnation, ultimately, because we all do this. To some degree or another, we all do this. So Jeremiah is trying to get the people of his day to stop doing this. Put on sackcloth, lament and wail, for the fierce anger of the Lord is not turned away from us. And that day, declares the Lord, the king and the officials will lose heart, the priests will be horrified, and the prophets will be appalled. Then I, Jeremiah, said, Ah, sovereign Lord, how completely you have deceived the people and Jerusalem by saying, you will have peace. Actually, he wasn't saying that. The false prophets were saying that, but he was allowing them to continue saying that when the sword is at our throats. At that time, this people in Jerusalem will be told, a scorching wind from the barren heights in the desert blows toward my people, but not to winnow or cleanse. A wind too strong for that comes from me, or comes at my command. So a destructive wind, not a wind that will cleanse anything, but a wind that will destroy things. Now I pronounce my judgments against them. Look, he advances like the clouds. His chariots come like a whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us! We are ruined. O Jerusalem, wash the evil from your heart and be saved. How long will you harbor wicked thoughts? A voice is announcing from Dan. Now remember, Dan was the northernmost port of Israel. So we're going back to that imagery of the danger coming from the north here. Proclaiming disaster from the hills of Ephraim. Tell this to the nations. Proclaim it to Jerusalem. A besieging army is coming from a distant land, raising a war cry against the cities of Judah. They surround her like men guarding a field, because she has rebelled against me, declares the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and start a new video here.